So thanks, Alex, for the presentation. I'm really, really happy to be here with you all, but also with Miguel. He's the director of the new Space Agency, but he's much more than that. For me and for all the space sector in Spain, he has been working for a long, long time, and he has worked in the public sector now, in a public institution, but has done everything in the private sector. He founded a company 20 years ago, so he knows about this entrepreneurship issue. Miguel is the director of the Space Agency, the National Space Agency, but he is also the director of the PERTE. Maybe we can start by understanding what the PERTE is. What is this project? Which are the objectives?
Okay, first of all, thank you, Noelia. Thank you for the words. And thank you for the invitation to the South Summit. PERTE is a special plan. It is a strategic plan to recover the economy. The PERTE comes from NextGen funds. NextGen, those are European funds, which is about 750 billion to recover the industry in Europe from the pandemic. And part of this goes to direct health issues, but part of that goes to the industry. Half of that, something like 300 billion, go for grants, and half of that goes for credits. Then Spain has a big part of this, about 70 billions. Now, this week, the government approved an addenda, a delta of another 8 billion. That means we are about 80 billions. And with these funds, the idea is to select strategic sectors. And airspace has been selected as one of the strategic sectors. And an important budget is devoted to promote the sector and to prepare the industry for the challenges that we're facing. This is about, originally it was about 4.5. Originally it was about 4.5 billions. The total now with the addenda will go for more than 5 billions in aeronautic and in space. And this is not all public. It is 50% public, but 50% is private investment. That means this is not just a government activity. There are three players. It is the private sector, the public sector, and the academia, and universities and research centers. This is a three sides of the triangle. Then, in this PERTE, there is some part devoted to aeronautics, like innovation. The main challenge is to reduce the footprint of the aviation. I mean, zero emission. That means hydrogen, electric, and the use of drones. This is the most important part for the aeronautic. And for space, it is to use space for climate change. We are planning a constellation of 16 satellites to fight against disaster, helping disaster monitoring, climate change events, together with a quantum distribution key system from space. There are many ambitious projects in space, and one of those projects is the creation of the Spanish Space Agency. That means this is in a nutshell what is the PERTE, which in fact there are 23 different activities in total for that about 5 billion investment, public and private.
So we have just learned that the PERTE is much more than the agency, but I think the agency, the national agency, is quite significant, and it has been requested by the space industry for a long, long time. How has the process to create the agency has gone?
Well, the process is difficult because, well, first of all, we create now the agency, but doesn't mean that Spain is new in space. I mean, Spain started in the 60s. It was an agreement with NASA for the Apollo missions. In fact, the Apollo mission used Madrid station. There are three deep network stations, which is Australia, Madrid, and Goldstone. That means we are in the space in the 60s. Spain founded the European Space Agency. That means the Spanish industry is very strong, but in the governmental level, there were 11 ministries dealing with the space issues. It's innovation, it is transportation, it is defense, it's agriculture, it is ecological transitions. I mean, and the idea is to join all those competences in a single entity, in a space agency. And the work was difficult because you had to go to all the ministries to take competences, people, and budget. And this is the last thing that the ministry want to do. Then it was quite hard. We created a council with all the ministries. We wrote the statutes. The statutes were ready. We started in September. In 6 months, we got the statute approved by the Board of Ministers. Then that was March last year. The first council meeting was 20th of April. Then we have about 1.5 months live is the Spanish Space Agency, and now it's working. The next process is the site of the agency is Seville, and now some people doing space in different ministries has to move to Seville. Now we're in the process of moving the people and hiring new people for the agency.
So everybody is running and pushing for this super quick creation of the agency. Which are the main objectives you have?
Well, the agency, first of all, we need to define a strategy. First thing is to do space strategy. This is important because you have different ministries, there are different goals. Then we need to have a national goal. Then this strategy has to be converted in programs and plans. This is the second step. We have to do the national plan, the national programs. Third objective would be space law. Many countries have a space law. We do not have a space law in Spain. I mean, Portugal, New Zealand, Australia, they have space law. Space law, what that means? Who can launch a satellite? What are the insurance requested? Who can certify that you can launch? All this should be written in a law, and we have to prepare this. And our third objective will be to draft this, to send it to the parliament, because at the end it's the parliament who has to approve it. But at the same time, we need to, and this is very important, we need to engage private sector. We have to foster investment in startups and entrepreneurs. We understand that the space, 30 years ago was an institutional issue. Today, space is really vibrant. Today, space is commercial. Today, there are many players, many entries. And the agency has to respond to where space is now. Then one of the main goals is to be sure that startup entrepreneur with a technological base can match the proper venture capital funds, and we have to be there helping for this. This is an important activity of the agency. But also international representation. When a given country wants to talk to Spain, they didn't know to whom, but now they have a given agency. Last week, we received the visit of NASA administrator. It was here with us 3 days. In this meeting with NASA, we signed the Artemis agreement, so that Spain will join NASA and other countries for the moon and the Mars exploration. We signed on Monday an agreement with the Mexican Space Agency. Yesterday, we got an agreement with the Malaysian Space Agency. That means we have a voice. But also for our international representation. I mean, in Brussels, most of the space activity are now a European issue. Then our diplomat in Brussels, wherever they discuss a space issue, they have to send a report to 11 ministries. They have different reports, and they have to take what is the main position of Spain. Now there will be a single body taking that. I mean, there's a lot of activity, a lot of function, which will go to the Spanish Space Agency.
Miguel, you mentioned two issues. I would like to have a bit more details, maybe. First one is, which are the particular lines for support entrepreneur in the space sector that you are going to put in place?
Well, we already have one. We was started in CDTI that we will assume for the Spanish Space Agency, which is Invierte. This is a tool to invest in startups, and said that if the government invest because they really are confident in a given technology, a given company, give confidence to private sector to also join those investments. Then we want to somehow foster private investment by doing public investment into the companies. This is one of the lines. Another important line will be many funds, they do not have the expert to evaluate the risk. I mean, many venture capital, it's not that they don't like risk, it's that they don't know how to assess the risk. Then we would like to be helping funds to assess the risk of technological programs. This is something which, this is, I think, the problem in Spain and in Europe compared to the States. In the States, most of those funds, they have experts in the space, and they can very well evaluate the risks. And we want to be this player. We want to be a partner of the investing entities, helping them to assess the risk.
And the other issue you mentioned is this collaboration with other countries, other international institutions. Which is the geopolitical situation, and how can it impact the national space strategy?
Well, space is living in Spain and in Europe a unique moment. It is really, we never have a situation like the one we have today. We have, you look to first Spain, then Europe. If you look in Spain, we have the recovery plan. The recovery plan is injecting in space hundreds of millions. We also use the recovery plan to increase our contribution to ESA. Our contribution to ESA just 8 years ago was 150 million per year. Today is 300. In about 5-6 years, we multiply by 2. And we got a compromise for the next 5 years of 1.5 billion in ESA programs. All this come back to Spanish companies. That means this is an increase like ever had.
Then, in addition to that, there is, in Europe, everybody realized that the big challenges we have, which are the main studies of Europe, it is the Green Deal, it is the digital transition, and both space play a key role, because this is the way to see what is our situation, this is the way to mitigate disaster, this is the way to solve the digital bridge. Then Europe is dedicating a unique amount of money into the space. The new big European program for space called IRIS Square. IRIS Square is a few hundred satellite constellation for secure connectivity. And this is a program which is starting now, which is new, apart from Copernicus and Galileo, which are the two big projects of Europe. But there is also another component strategically, which is defense. Ukrainian war showed that the space is an operational domain. And up to now in Europe, space was only civilian. But a few weeks ago, Europe has released what they call the European Union Strategy from Space for Security and Defense. And that will change. And there will be a new customer, which is defense, because some satellite has been destroyed in orbit. And now, in the past, we have 3 domains, which were land, sea, and air. Now there are 5 domains. It is cyber and space. Then that brings a new activity that was not before. All this is transferred in that the situation that we have, the amount of the budget for space programs is larger than ever in Europe and in Spain.
And this situation where we have the defense component is an opportunity, a challenge, which are the other challenges that can also impact entrepreneurs in this sector?
Well, this is an opportunity because, I mean, you look to the States, NASA space budget is roughly, let's say, 20 billion, but MOD budget is 30 billion. I mean, it is larger than NASA. Then this is a new player, this is a new activity, those are new projects, new programs, but it's not just defense in the sense that intentional attacks. It's defense in the sense that there are many risks which are posed by the space and we have to face, like the risk of space debris, the risk of collisions in space, the risk of potential near-Earth object who can collide with the Earth, the risk of space weather. There are many risks which are not intentional, but which are related to defense and security, which affect all of us. And the space is what we can use to protect us from all those risks.
Mm-hmm. So we have talked a lot on the institutional aspects and how the space agency can support the sector, but I would also like to discuss a bit more on your personal experience in the sector. As I said before, Miguel has worked for many years, and he founded a company which now is one of the largest one in Spain in the sector. 20 years ago, he founded a startup when we didn't talk about the startups yet at that moment. You faced some challenge at that time, and I'm sure that the challenges are different. How would you compare that moment for creating a space startup 20 years ago and the moment we have now?
Well, first of all, the word startup didn't exist. Then this was, it was also, there was no private activities in space. They were all institutional. I would say, there are in fact 2 moments, no? It's about 40 years ago. I was the very first engineer in a company, was a spin-off of the university. It was 1984. At that moment, there was really, Spain was at the beginning of space companies. Then the challenge was that there were no venture capital, technological fund. There is no private investment. There was not at all in space. Then the question is, you have to grow by organic growth. You need to have experienced people. That's why at the very beginning, it was university spin-off, was some university department working in the companies. Then entrepreneurship at that age was basically universities spin-off and activity. And the difficulty is how do you fund projects, no? When, for instance, when I was in the private industry, Noelia, she said I funded, but she is a co-founder of that company. Then it's not only me, we both co-funded the company. And for instance, as an example, it's something I always talk, when we did the very first Spanish private satellite, commercial satellite, was called Deimos 1. That was 2004, that was nearly 20 years ago. We went to the banks because there were only banks financing. There was no venture capital. You can only go to the banks. We went to a very big, a very well-known bank in Spain, and we present the project, and they loved the project. That's the best project that never been presented. Don't worry, you get the money. We have only to pass by the risk department, and the money will be yours. you can imagine, it will never pass the risk department. And what we were told is a pity because satellite, we don't know, but if that would be real estate never lose their value. It will always, and that was a few months before all real estate dropped down in Spain. It was a big problem. That means that the problem is that there was no tradition. There was nobody was investing in space. But now things change. Now I'm amazed. Obviously it started in the States. In the States, you remember Skybox. There were two graduates from Stanford, two very young guys, just recent graduate, went to a bank, got 100 million to do Skybox. That happened only in the States. Europe, this is difficult to happen. But they are investors. And we have here in the audience people who have been fighting with this, have been very successful in getting investors, and they're also investors here. That means that things have changed. Now the scenario is different. The same problem is still there. How do you assess the risk of a high technological program? And this is the main challenge.
But you are right. At that moment, probably the people founding a space company accumulate hundreds of years of experience. When we started Deimos, I think among the founders, we had like 100 years experience altogether. And now we see very young people founding their own space company. We have several of those later on in the other slots, and it's really different. More maybe on a personal again side and technical side. We have been talking about the challenge of finding investment, but there are other many challenges, and I really would like that the audience know a bit more about what you have faced along these years, and which are those challenges, and which is maybe the one that you will highlight, because I really know how many issues you have gone through, how super interesting aspects you have been able to start. Which is the one you always mention?
Well, it's difficult. You mentioned in my life what would be, well, at the very beginning I was working on interplanetary trajectories. This is in fact what I know very well how to do. There's the other thing, I get my level of incompetence. But
not true.
The real thing was then I was very happy because I was calculating the flyby trajectories of flyby for most of the European mission, like Rosetta, Giotto continuation. That was, I'll say, an important challenge. But if I have to choose one, maybe the most difficult, because it has the complexity to get the funds, was to fund privately and to launch the first two Spanish satellites, with Deimos 1 and Deimos 2, were difficult because, well, we need to fund it and to get it funded and to get it launched and to get it operated and to make them profitable. Maybe this is the most important challenge.
Yeah. And I remember at that time that that was a good example of the difficulty we had in Spain. Is we needed, if I remember properly, to launch those satellites, to go to these different ministers, to get the license for launch, the license for operate. So it was a journey, and I expect that the new agency will be the unique window.
It was funny because we asked a given ministry how we can launch the satellite, what will be the permission we have to do. Then this ministry asked to another, and then someone said, Miguel may know that. He asked me, do you know how you can satellite?
Yeah.
Then I got the question back. But now our hope is the agency can solve those issues.
Yeah. So that's all for us today. We had other people coming. We will have a slot on investors, and then we will have a slot with companies working on the sector, and a third one later on. And the startup competition. So maybe one thought for each of these three main groups: startups in the sector, the industry, the traditional industry, and the investors.
Well, for startups, fly high, be eagles. I know some of those new companies in Spain and Europe. There are unique ideas, they're unique technologies. You are brave. Think high. Go eagle. Please don't be shy, because you have capabilities. For in traditional industry, they have to partner. Now it's life of partnership. Space is about partnership. They have to do projects. They cannot be fully integrated. They should get all these companies. And investors, the same. Space, it is the future. If it is a future, it's a space. And we have to face it. And for the investor, that should be a real domain where they should deeply invest.
Miguel, thanks a lot. It was really, really a pleasure